Israel pledges to eliminate Hamas tunnels amid ongoing truce violations. Senate rejects bid to limit Trump's war powers on Venezuela. Spanish police arrest 13 suspected members of Venezuelan Trenda Aragua gang. ICC confirms war crimes charges against Uganda's Joseph Kony. Good afternoon, welcome to the World in 30 Minutes on Politics and Business Television. I'm Fatima, and we welcome Rahibu. Many thanks for joining us. Details of this news series and more content to come after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The news in full. Israel has vowed to destroy all remaining Hamas tunnels in Gaza despite ongoing ceasefire violations and continued hostilities in southern Khan Yunis. Defense Minister Israel Katz ordered the Israeli Defense Forces to prioritize tunnel demolition as part of a broader military strategy, even as negotiations continue to secure the release of hostages. The move comes amid reports of airstrikes and artillery fire pounding Gaza's yellow zone, where hundreds of Hamas fighters remain trapped underground. The renewed military push has drawn international scrutiny, with U.S. officials backing the operation under a proposed stabilization mechanism. President Donald Trump stated that a U.S. coordinated force may soon be deployed to Gaza, despite concerns over repeated Israeli breaches of the truce. Since the war began in October 2023, over 68,875 Palestinians have been killed and 170,679 wounded, according to Gaza health authorities. The humanitarian toll continues to rise as both sides struggle to uphold ceasefire terms. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that an international stabilization force coordinated by the United States is expected to be deployed in Gaza very soon. This force, likely to include troops from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, is part of Trump's post-war governance plan for the enclave. Following 2 years of conflict between Israel and Hamas, the initiative played a key role in securing a fragile ceasefire on October 10th, though the humanitarian crisis in Gaza remains dire. Speaking at a White House event with Central Asian leaders, Trump expressed optimism about the situation, stating Gaza is working out very well. The United Nations Security Council is preparing to authorize a 2-year mandate for the force, which will focus on protecting civilians, securing borders, and training Palestinian police. However, tensions persist, with Israel opposing the inclusion of Turkish forces under the proposed peace framework. In another development, the U.S. Senate has narrowly voted down a bipartisan measure that would have required President Donald Trump to seek congressional approval before launching military action against Venezuela. The bill, introduced by Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, failed by 51 to 49 votes, with only 2 Republicans crossing party lines to support it. The legislation aimed to curb Trump's growing military campaign in the region, which includes strikes on suspected drug trafficking vessels and the deployment of the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier of South America. The vote reflected deep divisions in Congress over executive war powers and foreign policy in Latin America. Critics argue that unilateral military action risks escalating tensions and undermining democratic oversight. Despite polls showing broad public opposition to war with Venezuela, the Senate's decision leaves Trump to continue operations without legislative constraints. The outcomes marks the second failed attempt in a month to rein in the administration authority amid rising concerns over civilian casualties and regional instability. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has carried out another lethal strike on a suspected drug smuggling vessel in the Caribbean Sea, killing 3 individuals linked to a designated terrorist organization. The operation, directed by President Donald Trump, marks the 17th such attack since September as part of an intensified anti-narcotics campaign targeting maritime trafficking routes. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the strike occurred in international waters and involved a vessel believed to be transporting narcotics. No U.S. personnel were harmed. In a statement, Hegseth warned that, and I quote, "to all narcotic terrorists who threaten our homeland. If you want to stay alive, stop trafficking drugs." End of quote. The campaign has drawn global attention for its aggressive posture, with critics urging greater transparency and oversight amid rising concerns over civilian casualties and regional stability. Meanwhile, Spanish authorities have arrested 13 suspected members of Venezuela's notorious Tren de Aragua crime gang in a coordinated operation across 5 cities: Barcelona, Madrid, Girona, A Coruña, and Valencia. The gang originally formed in Venezuelan state earlier this year. The arrest marks Spain's first major crackdown on the group, which is accused of drug trafficking and violent crimes across Latin America and Europe. The operation follows increased U.S. pressure on international law enforcement to dismantle Tren de Aragua's transnational networks. More than 200 alleged members were deported from the U.S. earlier this year, and American forces have targeted the gang's drug smuggling routes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Spanish police say the suspects were actively working to establish a foothold in Spain, where Venezuelans form one of the largest immigrant communities. Meanwhile, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has drawn sharp criticism from Russia after publicly stating his country is ready to sell ammunition to the European Union, even if it ends up in Ukraine. In a televised interview, Vučić emphasized Serbia's large stockpiles and production capacity, particularly of mortar shells, and expressed willingness to support European partners amid rising demand. The comments come as Serbia, a close Russian ally and one of the few European nations not to impose sanctions on Moscow, faces pressure to align more closely with EU policies. Russia's foreign ministry swiftly responded, demanding Russia, including recent gas deals and IT investment. Vučić's statement is seen as a strategic pivot towards deeper EU integration, potentially complicating Serbia's balancing act between East and West. You're still watching The World in 30 Minutes live on Politics and Business TV. Still to come, North Korea fires ballistic missile days after U.S. defense chiefs visit to Seoul. Stay with us. Welcome back. China has officially commissioned its third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, marking a major milestone in President Xi Jinping's military modernization drive. The vessel entered service after extensive sea trials and high-profile ceremony in Sanya, Hainan province, attended by Xi himself and over 2,000 naval and shipbuilding personnel. Named after the province facing Taiwan, the Fujian is China's first indigenously designed carrier equipped with an electromagnetic aircraft launch system, EMALS, a technology previously exclusive to the U.S. Navy. Analysts say this advancement allows Chinese jets to carry heavier payloads and operate more efficiently, significantly expanding Beijing's maritime reach amid rising tensions in the South China Sea and over Taiwan. In the meantime, North Korea has launched a short-range ballistic missile just days after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth concluded high-level security talks in South Korea. According to Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the missile was fired from North Pyongan province and traveled approximately 700 kilometers, that's about 435 miles, before landing in the East Sea, also known as amid stalled diplomatic engagement and rising tensions over U.S. sanctions targeting North Korean cybercrime networks. South Korean and U.S. surveillance system had detected preparations for the launch and tracked the projectile in real time. Japan also confirmed the missile's trajectory, prompting renewed calls for regional security coordination. The timing of the test, closely following Hegseth's visit, has raised concern about North Korea's intent to challenge U.S. influence in the region. Still talking Asia, at least 5 people have died in Vietnam after Typhoon Kalmaegi slammed into the country's central and highland provinces late Thursday, November 6. The storm brought sustained winds of up to 149 kilometers per hour, that's about 92 miles per hour, triggering widespread damage, power outages, and flooding across regions, including Gia Lai, Tan Hoa and Quang Tri. According to Vietnamese state media, the storm damaged over 3,000 homes, sank 11 boats, and left 1.2 million people without electricity. Authorities have warned of continued heavy rainfall and rising river levels, which could lead to further flooding and landslide. Kalmaegi had earlier devastated the Philippines, where the death toll has climbed to 188, making it one of the deadliest storms in recent years. Authorities in Indonesia are investigating a 17-year-old student in connection with a mosque explosion that injured at least 55 people during Friday's prayers at SMA 27, a high school located within a narrow compound in North Jakarta. Witnesses reported two loud blasts, but just as the sermon began, triggering panic and a chaotic evacuation. The explosion, which originated near the mosque loudspeaker system, left dozens hospitalized with burns and trauma. Police have declared the site a crime scene and deployed bomb disposal units to secure the area. The suspect, whose identity remains undisclosed, was reportedly undergoing surgery at the time of the announcement. While the motive is still unclear, the incident has sparked national concern over school safety and youth radicalization. Investigators are continuing to examine whether the act was ideologically driven or personally motivated. While the International Criminal Court has officially confirmed 39 charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity against fugitive Ugandan rebel leader Joseph Kony, the charges, which include murder, rape, sexual slavery, forced pregnancy, and the use of child soldiers, stem from atrocities committed between 2002 and 2005, while Kony led the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda. This marks the first time the ICC has confirmed charges against a suspect in absentia, paving the way for trial proceedings once Kony is apprehended. Judges from the ICC's pre-trial Chamber 3 dismissed a request to hold the case and ruled that there are substantial grounds to believe Kony is criminally responsible for the crimes. The confirmation follows a September hearing and includes attacks on displaced persons, camps, and schools, as well as systemic abductions of children and women. The decision is seen as a major step towards justice for thousands of victims and a milestone in international accountability efforts. Chinese President Xi Jinping has congratulated Cameroon's President Paul Biya on his recent re-election, reaffirming Beijing's commitment to deepening bilateral ties. In a message sent on Friday, Xi praised the long-standing friendship between China and Cameroon, highlighting recent achievements in political trust and cooperation across various sectors. He emphasized mutual support on core interests and expressed readiness to work closely with Biya to advance strategic relations. President Xi noted that 2026 marks the 55th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two nations, calling it a pivotal moment to strengthen collaboration. He pledged to use the outcomes of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation as a springboard for expanding joint development efforts. The message signals China's continued engagement in Africa and its intent to bolster diplomatic and economic partnerships with Cameroon. And that wraps up the program, but before we go, the headlines again. Israel pledges to eliminate Hamas tunnels amid ongoing truce violations. Senate rejects bids to limit Trump's war powers on Venezuela. Spanish police arrest 13 suspected members of Venezuelan Trenda Arugua gang. ICC confirms war crimes charges against Uganda's Joseph Kony. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business TV.English on YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram at PMBTV_English and TikTok at PMBTV_ENG. Remember to subscribe and stay informed. From me, Fatima Abubakar Rabo, to have a lovely day. Bye for now.